Hello and welcome to Western Edge Living. I'm your host, Wild Bill Polinick, and I am so glad that you've made the decision to tune into our show today. We appreciate it, and what a good show to be a part of today on your side, because we have with us the 26th President of the United States of America, Mr. Theodore Roosevelt. Teddy, can I call you Teddy, sir?
You may. Of course, my friends call me Colonel, and Mr. Polinick, you're my friend. My dear and old friend. It has been too long since our getting together.
We've interviewed in the past. We've talked about many things, and this is the only time we really get together. Socially, our schedules don't work, so I scheduled you to come in and visit with us today, and I have an agenda that I'm going to present to you here in just a minute or so.
May I first say, congratulations on this wonderful new TV program that's going to be so important for all of us in western North Dakota and eastern Montana.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir. And yes, welcome to Western Edge Living. And we're going to visit with Mr. Roosevelt here in just a moment. First, I want to remind you that the induction ceremony, the 2024 inductions for the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame, watch for that here on Consolidated. Every year, Consolidated puts that event in our archives and airs it for you through July and August. And also the Miss Rodeo North Dakota pageant as well will be part of the lineup coming up real soon here on Consolidated. And we like to have news from the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame, and news from Medora, and news from the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. And so, having said all that, we're just going to get right into it with the namesake of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. Did they give you money to put your name on there? You know, like you have the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Did they give you any kickback for having your name on that?
Not a penny. And not even any royalties for good to the last drop from Maxwell House. Of course, while you can't get things done without an investment of time, treasure, and talent, I think far beyond the investment of money, it's the fact that that presidential library will have families and children from all throughout the country and all throughout the world that may receive something priceless, inspiration to be a good citizen of their state, this country, and wherever they come from.
It's going to have a lot of things from your archives and things that we haven't seen in Medora in the past. Do you know what some of those might be?
I do not. Of course, the operation of the museum will be done in coordination with the National Archives and Records Administration. There's also a great deal of collecting that's going on. There will be exhibits that are permanent exhibits and others that are temporary and on loan. We spoke briefly earlier today. There are other places administered by the Department of the Interior, the National Park Service, that do have a great deal of what I might have had during my lifetime in the way of possessions. I wasn't much of a man on possessions. I liked books. The only thing I liked more than books were children, and I had both in abundance. But for example, there's a cannon from the Battle of San Juan Hill that is at the Theodore Roosevelt National Historic Site known as Sagamore Hill. There are items from my childhood at my birthplace at 28 East 20th Street in New York City. Also, the Theodore Roosevelt Inaugural Site in Buffalo, New York, has a great deal from that time period of the Pan American Expo, my vice presidency, and the assumption of office on September 14th, 1901 in Buffalo.
Mr. President, you were very instrumental in establishing the national park system. You recognize the beauty in this country. We have a treasure here in western North Dakota, the Theodore Roosevelt Memorial Park. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to spend time and learn about the history of our country, particularly North Dakota. What drove you to that? Obviously, the beauty of the land. I know you talk about the Badlands, and having spent time here led to your becoming president. Talk about the establishment of the park system, sir.
And if I may, first, for your viewers that might not know, I wrote of my time in North Dakota that it was here that the romance of my life began, specifically in the Badlands as a cattle rancher circa 1883 to 1886. Also told the people of Fargo in 1910 that I would have never become president had it not been for my experiences in North Dakota. Don't hold it against me. Our mutual friend, the author and historian, points out that the following day in Montana, I said I would have never been president but for my experiences in Montana. The ranchers in your viewership understand that we were all free-range cattle ranchers then. There were no fences. The spring roundups and fall roundups were in eastern Montana as well. So I don't think I was being a politician. I was being sincere about my gratitude for my neighbors in eastern Montana. It took an act of Congress to name a national park. Our first national park? Yellowstone, 1872. There were 5 national parks when I became president. I was able to double the number to 10. 3 of those national parks are indeed still national parks. Mesa Verde National Park, the Pueblo Indian Ruins in southern Colorado, Wind Cave in nearby South Dakota, and Crater Lake out in Oregon, the deepest natural lake in North America, one of my parks. As happens, sometimes a national park reverts to another use. Chickasaw National Recreation Area in Oklahoma was Platte National Park by my legislation. And here in North Dakota, Sully's Hill, now called White Horse Hill at Devil's Lake, was a national park by an act of Congress during my presidential administration. But it was difficult to get parks approved by Congress. I was a progressive on the issue of the conservation of our natural resources, and I discovered that all too often the opposite of progress was Congress. It was my own fellow Republican Speaker of the House, Joe Cannon of Danville, Illinois, who had famously said, "Not 1 cent for scenery." But, Mr. Polinick, you know the parks are not just scenery. They're the nation's wild places and playgrounds. And both from Roosevelt Arch at Yellowstone, where I camped in 1903, and the Organic Act creating Yellowstone in 1872, the words that come from that act, we call it the Organic Act. They're above Roosevelt Arch. They say, "For the benefit and enjoyment of the people." You mentioned Theodore Roosevelt Memorial Park. That's what it was called upon its inception. The Congressman Lemke of Fargo sponsored the legislation. It became a full national park and dropped the word memorial in 1978 during President Carter's administration. So of the 54 fully fledged national parks, our Theodore Roosevelt National Park is the only one named for an individual.
There are a lot of things, a lot of directions we can go with the park, but since your time is limited, I'm just going to ask you one thing specifically.
Do you know something that I don't?
I do.
I'll be 166 in October, but apparently my time is limited.
Your time here on Western Edge Living.
Yes, sir.
Let me rephrase
for
that.
this visit.
Okay, and one thing that I wanted to ask you about pertaining to the park, the horses are staying. The wild horses are staying in the park. Talk about that.
As they should. The wild horses have been in the park since its inception in 1947, its dedication in 1949. You might know the legend and lore and the truth of it better than I. But it's said that those horses find their roots all the way back to the herd of Sitting Bull. That when he succumbed and surrendered to the American forces, that he sold some of his horses here locally. In the 1930s, the United States Army brought thoroughbreds and mixed the thoroughbreds with the old roans and the other horses of Sitting Bull. And those horses are a delight for tourists who come from throughout the country. There's a business called Chasing Horses. They and others keep track of all of the horses, the studs and the mares and the foals. And there was recently born another foal in the herd. And it's already got a name and a backstory. They tell me it's better than watching a soap opera to see who's the father of this one, right?
Okay, that's wonderful. It's great to see the horses driving by the interstate, to see the horses mingled with the buffalo. That's always something that I cherish every time I travel to Medora on Interstate 94. Back to your presidency in at the beginning of in the 1900s. Playing a game, college students were dying. They were dying. In fact, I think the statistic that I saw was like 18 football deaths and 159 serious injuries in 1904. And it was from the game of football, the birth of football. And you recognized what a popular sport it was. You attended a game when you were at Harvard, I believe?
The Harvard-Yale game was the pinnacle of athletic contests in the Ivy League during my time at Harvard.
There's headlines. If you do a search on Theodore Roosevelt National Football League, there's headlines that say you saved football.
More than that, there's a wonderful book by the author John Miller, of all things, a Wall Street Journal sports writer. Of course, sports is big business. I prefer amateur sports myself, but that's perhaps a visit for another day. The game was very different and much more violent in 1904. It was 5 yards for first down instead of 10. The forward pass was illegal. The entire game was this violent scrum, and the death and injury rates are just as you've quoted. I held a conference at the White House. I invited college presidents.
Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, I believe, were in attendance.
We also had Walter Camp,
okay,
famous for being a player coach at Yale, built the program at Stanford, which was founded late in 1893. Stanford now a powerhouse in football. I said, men, the game is on trial, and unless you come up with rules for the safety of the players, the game may be outlawed. My own alma mater, Harvard, had discontinued the game the year previous as a result of an order of the college president. Georgia, the home today of Georgia Tech and the University of Georgia, outstanding football teams, the legislature considered legislation to outlaw the game. 2 parents of a boy deceased on the field traveled to Atlanta to testify against the legislation. Their late boy so loved the game. I said I'd rather keep the game with the violence than lose the game altogether. After all, life is like football. No flinching, no fouling, and hit the line hard. Chastised, those men went away, held more meetings. The following year, in 1906, new rules for college football. 10 yards for first down, the forward pass now legal. It's the same game that we enjoy and watch today on Fridays and Saturdays. Shame upon us all. Sundays, too, and other days of the week. But that's the beginning of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, now headquartered in Indianapolis. And the highest award of the NCAA is the Theodore Roosevelt Public Service Award. One of the winners was Alan Page, the defensive player of the Minnesota Vikings. Mm-hmm. He was for 2 decades a member of the Minnesota Supreme Court. The award is given to someone who was a Division I athlete who goes on to live a life of public service. And I guess that purple people eater was pleased when he won the Teddy.
I have to mention this, that the day that we're conducting this interview is Vince Lombardi's birthday, and also Joe Montana turned 68 today.
Oh, how wonderful.
And so I find a little intervention there.
I'm going to match you and say that tonight at the Medora Musical, I will be announcing the birthdays of 2 of the Medora Musical singers. 2 of the girls both share a birthday.
Okay, we're going to talk to a guy named Joe Weigand about that musical coming up here in just a few
I understand
minutes.
He'll be quite pleased to do so.
Okay, all right. Before we let you go, Mr. President, is there any question that I have not asked that you might want to share with our viewers today?
The question is implied. How is one to live? Live life for the glory of work and the joy of living. Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. Do what you can with what you have, where you are. And believe you can, and you're halfway there.
For the people that are fans of our park systems and the people that are fans of the National Football League and people all across America, I can see why that in some of those internet searches, it also says that Theodore Roosevelt was one of the greatest presidents of our time. And I want to thank you, sir, for taking your precious time and joining us here on the TV show today.
Thank you so very much to everyone involved at Western Edge Living. Bully.
Theodore Roosevelt on Western Edge Living. And coming up, we've got something special. We're going to talk to a young lady from the eastern side of the country who has never been to Medora, but she's on her way, and she stopped by Western Edge Living first. We'll be back in just a moment here on Western Edge Living. Being affected with hearing loss is a common problem, but it made me feel detached from those around me, particularly loved ones. Finally, I made the decision to contact Alliance Center for Hearing in Bismarck. They understand hearing loss and are very thorough in testing, diagnosis, and recommending a solution. Contact Alliance Center for Hearing to begin your journey to better hearing. Alliance Center for Hearing gave me my hearing back, which brought me closer to those who matter most in my life.
At Poncheros, we put a lot of work into building every burrito to last for about 10 minutes. Poncheros. Come build your better. At Poncheros, every tortilla starts as a small ball of dough. Then it's fresh pressed to perfection. That's just how we do it. Poncheros. Come build your better.
Yes, there are a lot of things you could be doing right now, but you're watching Western Edge Living here on Consolidated. I'm Bill Polnick, and I thank you for tuning in this evening. We have something kind of special for you. We're going to talk to Joe Weigand here in just a moment, but accompanying Joe to the studios of Western Edge Living, a young lady originally from Oklahoma, now living in New York. It's Megan Tabor. Megan,
Yes.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're here because you haven't seen your husband for how long now?
5 weeks.
5 weeks. He's a cast member
Yes.
at the Medora Musical.
Yes.
What has he been telling you?
So he's been telling me that this show is like fun for all ages,
Okay.
super kid-centered, kid-oriented, and Trent and I actually, for several years before we moved to New York, would go to Branson with my family, and we have a background singing gospel music, country. That is very much like what the both of us were brought up on. So from what I've heard, it's a very similar vibe to, you know, the types of shows that you see in Branson, and the Midwest feel that both of us are very connected to from being from Oklahoma.
Tell me about the conversation that took place when somebody told you, was it your husband, that said Theodore Roosevelt is going to be picking you up at the airport in Dickinson? What was that conversation like?
Well, hey, listen, their rehearsal schedule has been crazy. They are putting so much work into the show. So, you know, you got to do what you got to do. I haven't seen him in 5 weeks, and he is actually understudying for Theodore Roosevelt when Joe is gone. So you know, what better way to meet him than getting picked up from the airport from him.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are an actress, I understand?
I am,
Okay,
yes.
so you're going to have more than just a layman's view of the musical, and you're going to look at the inner workings and how it's all put together. What about the Badlands of North Dakota? What have you heard about that?
You know, I really have just heard it is absolutely gorgeous. All of the photos that I'm seeing on Facebook, like the sunsets and the
sure.
sunrises, and it's been years since I've been like in a national park type of setting, so I'm really just very excited to be surrounded by all the beauty.
Are you an animal lover?
I am.
Being from Oklahoma, I would think that you must be.
Yes.
Yes, we have wild horses, we have buffalo, we have deer, of course, we have prairie dogs. And you're just going to, you know what we're going to do, Megan, is we're going to catch up with you again down the road here in a few days after you've had the Medora experience. And we're going to talk to you about some of the things that you've experienced through the week. So
I can't wait to tell everybody what my review is. I'm sure it's going to be glowing. I'm so excited to be here.
Before we turn you loose, I wanted to mention, too, that you were working with, I believe, Dr. Oz here recently.
I was.
Yeah, what was that about?
Yeah, so I work in social media marketing. I own my own business.
Okay.
And work with a lot of clients in New York, and we just did a shoot with him yesterday. So, yeah, I was leading that project, which I was so scared. I'm like, who put the 25-year-old little girl in charge of a Dr. Oz shoot? But it was a blast. So.
Oh, wow. So Dr. Oz on Monday, Theodore Roosevelt on Tuesday.
Right?
What are you going to top it off with, huh?
Well, yeah, I'm so excited to see the musical. I'm going tonight.
Okay.
So it's a jam-packed week, but in the best way. Yeah.
Megan Tabor, enjoy everything that there is to enjoy in Western North Dakota, the Badlands, and Medora, and we'll get your take on it in a few days. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Our guest,
Thanks
Megan
for having
Tabor.
me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
We'll be back with Joe Weigand coming up on Western Edge Living. Service Pro Express Lube, now open on East Villar Dickinson. Gets your vehicle serviced quickly and you're back on the road in no time. No appointment required. You don't even get out of your vehicle. They utilize Service Pro oil, the only oil produced and refined in the U.S., and it meets or exceeds vehicle manufacturer requirements. Plus, they top off all fluids and perform multi-point inspections. It's part of what's offered at Service Pro Express Lube. Students looking for a part-time gig? Inquire at Service Pro Express Lube. Ask about the Scholarship Incentive Program. Service Pro Express Lube, East Villar Dickinson, next to Lucky's.
Here's your Lotus Energy drink.
Thanks so much. Can I pay my consolidated bill online?
We have an app for that.
Can I get a text on my phone when my bill is due?
We have an app for that.
Download the Consolidated My Account app today and take control of your account.
with useful features like viewing or paying your bill right on your phone. Never miss a payment again with the Consolidated My Account app, available free at the App Store or Google Play.
Medora Boot and Western Wear in the heart of historic Medora, open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Boot is their middle name, and they have over 1,500 pairs of boots in stock for all ages and sizes. They also have the all-new Higher Boot, with more expected to arrive this summer. Western clothes, belts, caps, hats, and more, including a great line of toys and Longhorn wall decor. Medora Boot and Western Wear for the cowboy and cowgirl in you.
Medora Boot and Western Wear.
And we are back on Western Edge Living. We thank you for viewing our show this evening. And we had Teddy Roosevelt. We had a lovely lady, Megan Tabor. And now, my friend Joe Weigand.
Wow, Bill. How are you, brother?
I'm wonderful because I get to spend time with you. This is the only time we get to spend together. Our schedules just don't, they conflict so much. We never have time to sit down and visit. How have you been, sir?
I've been really well, because I heard Teddy might have quoted himself or Harold Schaefer, the glory of work and the joy of living. What a joy it is to be associated with all the good things going on in Medora, from hiking the point-to-point trails, where I got to take you up to see Friendship Point. It's the westernmost view of the West Valley from up on Town Butte. You see the Cowboy Hall of Fame. You see the National Park Service. You see the State Historic Society and the Chateau. You see the Presidential Library being built. Because you know what, Bill? Nobody gets it done alone. They get it done with their friends. And I'm so glad for your friendship and the friendship of all of the organizations, the private businesses, in addition to the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation, that makes Medora just the wonderful place it is.
I just got goosebumps when you used the word quote and you named Harold Schaefer, because I have a quote from Harold Schaefer that I was going to share with you today.
Yeah.
I read his book, Aristocrat of the West, the story of Harold Schaefer.
Yeah.
And in that book, he is quoted from the 1990s. He said, "I don't think people realize the possibilities for expansion Medora has. I don't think our own people, those who work for us, have a vision of what could happen. It's a matter of designing the possibilities so they're available. One day, investors will be looking at Medora." That's from Harold Schaefer in the early 1990s. He was a dreamer. He had the ability to turn his dreams into a vision and then rally the people around him. And you are living a dream that he had.
I never met Harold Schaefer. I met his widow, Shyla. And aren't we all better people for having known Shyla Schaefer? Her favorite phrase to greet people, even when she didn't know them, is remembered out in front of the Bill and Jane Marseille Life Skills Center. It's a big rock that quotes Shyla saying, "Hello, you nice people." Well, when I read about Harold and I hear the stories about Harold from those who did know him, his sense of promotion that was sincere. You know what it's like to sell a product if you believe in the product.
How do you get excited about glass wax?
Well, in Mr. Bubble Bath.
Yeah.
Well, what he knew was that was going to help. That was in that era where we were trying to find ways to make housework simpler, more efficient. And I get where he was coming from. Also a businessman and a great philanthropist. But his sense of optimism combined with hard work and promotion, when I've met his extended family, including this last week, his grandson, great-grandson, and great-great-grandson were all together, and the latter a baby. But the sense of Harold and the promoter that Harold was, because he believed in his product, whether it was Gold Seal or Medora. I'm a promoter. I love promoting Medora all across this country. And this year, I get to promote the Medora Musical. But, you know, they've taken away my best joke, Bill. For 12 years doing my matinee, I said, I'm not in the musical. The producers have seen me dance and heard me sing. Now I'm in the musical with some of the most talented people, including Trent Tabor, who will be playing Teddy Roosevelt in my absence a little bit this summer. He's got some wonderful roles. I don't know, you've seen the musical yet?
I have not.
Oh, boy.
I have not.
Good thing you're wearing boots, because it's going to knock your socks off. If you had laces, there'd be damage done. It's a great show with great talent. People that know the Medora Musical are going to love it. And again, for another season, people that just happen upon it on their Western Park tour, they're going to fall in love with the Medora Musical this year.
Compare it to the musical that we've all seen. You know, I was at the very first one, July 1st, 1965.
My goodness.
Mother was invited by Harold Schaefer to come see the biggest spectacle ever in the Badlands. And
well, let me tell you the neat thing about July 1st, 2024, which will be we're in the 60th year. Now, July 1st, 2025 will be the 60th anniversary, but we're in the 60th season. As a showman, you understand how we count those. And July 1st this year, we have a special that in honor of 1965. Tickets for the musical that night are $19.65,
Oh my.
which is a deal. That show is sold out.
It is.
We have a strategy to sell out 7 shows this summer at least. That's a 3,000-seat audience, which Trent Tabor and the other performers know. Boy, the energy and vibe you get from a house that's that big. I'm not an expert on what the musical always was. It always had patriotism and faith and family and freedom and a little bit of gospel and made you feel good, and there's dancing. I'm from Chicago, so I can quote the Blues Brothers. There's both kinds of music, country and Western. But the thing that I think is prominent that I see is that a Theodore Roosevelt who tells the story in the first person of the Spanish-American War and the sacrifice of lives that were made for the cause of Cuba Libre, and also the man in the arena. Within the context of a wonderful, fun musical, there's meat on the bone from Theodore Roosevelt this year, and one of the highest compliments I got was from some people who knew Harold, who said Harold Schaefer would love the Medora Musical this year for the fact that there's probably more earnest Theodore Roosevelt than you've seen in decades. We've always saluted him. We've always told his story. Even with Old Four Eyes, you know, that drama was based on the premise that Teddy's coming to town, right? Theodore Roosevelt's spirit never left the Badlands. It's celebrated every night in the Medora Musical, and I'm honored and pleased to be a small part of doing that this year.
I have no doubt in my mind that Harold Schaefer, as little as I knew him, would be just thrilled with Joe Weigand, yourself, and your portrayal of the 26th president. Harold was bigger than life, and we greatly he's inducted into the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. And when he spoke, he banged his fist on the podium when he was talking about Louis L'Amour, and a crack of thunder went through Jaden Terrace, and I knew that Harold had an audience other than those that were seated in front of him.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story.
Yes.
Well, we got to get together more often to share stories. Congratulations on Western Edge Living. You, like Harold, love the Badlands, love Medora. We're so thankful for what you do. Good luck on everything going on with the induction for the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame inductee class and the North Dakota pageant, the Miss North Dakota that's just been crowned. I'm sure she'll be out to Medora as well. And everything that you do, we just wish you all the best.
Joe, thank you. Our time is
real pleasure.
So precious, and I don't take it for granted.
Keep watching Western Edge Living here. And on Consolidated. We love our friends at Consolidated, too.
Our guest today, Joe Weigand, here on Western Edge Living. Thank you so much for watching.